Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Axis Builds. Take another look at underneath the engine. I like the way everything's sitting. The only thing I don't like is how low that sump pump sits. My concern is getting it ripped off on the freeway or going over a speed bump. So I think what I'm going to wind up doing, because it's not a high performance engine, I think what I'm going to wind up doing is just pulling it off and seeing if I get high temps without it. If I don't get high temps running in the summertime or just running around daily, I don't think I'm going to be putting it back on until I decide at some point putting a turbo on the unit. If I decide to put a turbo on the car, then I probably will figure out a way to put it back on. Maybe I'll raise up the car a little bit more at that point. But I like the way it's sitting. So I think at this point, I'm just gonna pull that oil sump off. It'll give me about another 2-inch clearance, and then once I have the bumper on, if I do hit a speed bump, it was actually gonna hit that bumper before it hits anything else, and I think I'll feel a little bit more safe with that. So anyways, what I'm gonna do is get the car off the ground, drain the oil, and figure out how to remove that sump pump. It shouldn't be too hard. So anyways, remember guys to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell for upcoming notifications. All right guys, let's get her done. guys, so you noticed I put the oil back in a different container. It's only because that oil has only been used for startup. It's still good oil. It doesn't have any miles on it at all. So after I get done with this job, I'm going to actually put it back in. So meanwhile, I cleaned off the gasket on this, okay? Because I'm going to reuse that one. And then I also cleaned off the gasket on this guy, or I'm working on it right now. So let's go ahead and get this thing scraped off. So I don't know if you can see that very well, but there is a pipe clamp. I got to loosen that guy up. Let's get my hand out of the way. Got to loosen that guy up, take this extension off, and then I can just put the filter back on in here. Okay, and then I should be able to put a new gasket on there and gasket sealant as well. And then I'll be able to put the bottom plate back on. So let's go ahead and get that ring off and this drop tube and continue. Alright guys, so I'm going to be using this ultra black advanced formula gasket maker. It says it's oil resistant. So this should be good for this application. I'm going to be putting it on both sides of those rings and on the filter and on the cap. Okay, so let's go ahead and get those things doused up. Alright guys, so now that I got a little bit of squishing coming out the sides, I'm going to let it sit for about an hour, and then I'll come back and retorque it. The reason why they want you to just let it sit for an hour is so that it actually sets up and becomes a gasket between the two, so you don't just squeeze all of it out. So we'll let it sit for an hour, come back, and tighten them all down to the torque specs of those bolts. So gonna go ahead and turn you guys off, and I'll turn you back on when we need to tighten them back down. Alright guys, so I waited an hour. Now I just need to cinch down these bolts. They will squish a little bit more, but that's fine. Alright guys, so I got that sump pump off, got the cap back on, or the cover, or whatever you want to call that. The drain nuts back in. So now I just got to wait 24 hours before I can put oil back in it. I'm sure I could wait, 6 hours and put it in there, but I'll give it the full dry time. Alright guys, so thanks for watching, and we'll fill her back up, get her back on the ground. Alright guys, so I got the sump off. You can see that this thing sits, see if I can get a good measurement for you guys, roughly about 3 inches lower on the engine. So by me removing that, I gained 3 inches of clearance under the car. So let's take a look at that under the car. Alright, first off, you guys can notice that you'll actually see the transmission mount now. So that would be the first thing that would hit on a speed bump, okay, assuming the wheels will allow it. Now, after that, my sump pump sat 3 inches lower from here, okay, so that would be the first thing after that transmission mount that would hit. By me removing that, it gained me 3 inches, so I'm looking at almost 5 inches of clearance. See if I can get a true measurement on that. Alright, so I'm actually sitting at 6 inches off the ground, whereas before I was sitting about 3.5 inches off the ground. So there you go. I got 3 more inches of clearance, 2.5, 3 more inches of clearance, depending on how the suspension was sitting at the time. So I feel pretty safe with not running the sump pump on this engine. I also feel pretty safe with the ground clearance at the moment. I like how everything's set up. I think I'm going to leave it at this time and concentrate on getting the rest of the bodywork done now. Alright guys, thanks for joining me on another episode of Off Axis Builds. Got that oil sump off. Not much more to say. I mean, 3 inches more clearance just by removing that. I'm pretty happy with that. I love the way that the car's sitting. If at any point I want to go taller tires, I might put the sump pump back on. But at the moment, I'm just going to hold on to it and go from there. So, yeah. Alright guys, thanks for joining me on another episode. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Hit that little bell for upcoming notifications. Alright guys, remember it's built, not bought. Have a good one.